May 6, 1527. Rome is burning. An army of angry, unpaid soldiers is breaking into the Vatican, killing the Swiss guard on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. Inside, Pope Clement VII is trapped and has only one way out. It's not a carriage or a hidden door, but a secret hallway, 800 meters long, high above the city streets. This is the story of that daring escape, but it's also the story of what was hidden deep under the Pope's feet, a city of the dead, which held a secret the whole papacy was built on, a secret that would stay hidden for almost 1,600 years. Section 1. The horizontal threat, the Passetto di Borgo. To understand the Vatican, you need to know how open to attack it was. For hundreds of years, the Pope wasn't just a religious leader. He was a king, a powerful figure in the dangerous world of Italian and European politics. And kings always have enemies. That's why, back in 1277, Pope Nicholas II ordered one of the smartest defensive structures in the world to be built, the Passetto di Borgo. It's a high, protected hallway, like a secret highway, that runs 800 meters, or about half a mile, from the Pope's home in the Vatican to the strong fortress of Castel Sant'Angelo. Castel Sant'Angelo started as the tomb of a Roman emperor, Hadrian, but later became the Pope's best panic room. The Passetto was the key. It let a pope and his helpers run from the Vatican without being seen, high above the chaos of Rome, and lock themselves safely inside the castle. And it was used. In 1494, Pope Alexander VI, the famous Borgia Pope, used it to get away from an invading French army. But its most famous moment was on that terrible day in 1527, as angry troops of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V poured into Rome. Pope Clement VII was in his chapel praying. Hearing the screams of his guards, cardinals burst in and rushed him to the hallway. Witnesses said that if he had stopped for just 3 more prayers, he would have been caught. As the Pope hurried through the narrow passage, his helpers threw a dark cloak over his bright white clothes to hide him from gunmen in the streets below. He was one of the last to get through. Of the 189 Swiss guards on duty that day, only 42 made it to the castle's safety. The rest fought to the death, dying to give their Pope a few more minutes. Their sacrifice worked. Clement VII survived, safe in the fortress while his city was cruelly attacked and robbed. This hallway was a last-chance escape plan to save a pope's life from enemies on earth, an escape across the city. But that's only half the story, because the Vatican had a much older, deeper plan to beat death. A plan that wasn't about running across rooftops, but about mastering what lies under the ground. For that, we have to go down, straight down. Section 2. The Vertical Mystery, a City of the Dead. Jump forward almost exactly 1,600 years to 1939. Europe is about to fall into another war, and Pope Pius XI has just died. His last wish was to be buried in the Vatican grottos, the tombs right under St. Peter's Basilica. Workers started digging to make his tomb. Then one day they broke right through the floor. They weren't looking at a basement or an old foundation. They found open air. They had broken through time into a Roman street that had been sealed off and forgotten for over 1,500 years. What they'd found was the Vatican necropolis, an ancient Roman city of the dead. Roman law said people couldn't be buried inside the city walls, so big cemeteries were built along the main roads out of Rome. This one was on what was then called Vatican Hill. It was an outdoor graveyard full of tombs for both pagans and Rome's first Christians. So how did a whole city of the dead stay hidden under the most famous church in the world? The answer is because of a very important man in history, Emperor Constantine. In the 4th century, after he made Christianity legal, Constantine decided to build a huge church to honor the Apostle Peter. The story was that Peter had been killed nearby and buried in this very graveyard. Constantine was set on building his church right on top of what he thought was Peter's tomb. But there was one huge problem. The necropolis was on a hill. To get a flat surface for his church, Constantine made an incredible choice. Instead of tearing down the cemetery, he told his workers to fill the entire thing with tons of dirt, burying it completely. By doing this, he buried the city of the dead, saving it like a time capsule, and built the first St. Peter's Basilica right on top. For 1,600 years, it stayed silent and perfectly saved. Finding this perfectly saved Roman street, just feet under millions of visitors who had no idea it was there, is one of the most amazing historical finds of the 1900s. It shows us a part of history most people never knew about. If you find hidden stories like this as interesting as we do, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss our next dive into the world's greatest secrets. Section 3. The Convergence. The Search for Peter. Finding the necropolis was amazing, but it made the new Pope, Pius XII, and his team ask a big question. Did Constantine get it right? Was St. Peter's tomb actually down there? A top-secret dig began, known only by the Italian code name Scavi. For 10 years, archaeologists carefully worked their way through the old street. They found fancy tombs of rich Roman families right next to the simpler graves of Christians. As they moved west, the tombs seemed to gather around one special, simple spot. It wasn't a big, fancy tomb, just a plain grave in the dirt. And right above it, they found a shrine from the 2nd century called the Trophy of Gaius, the same monument that old writers said marked Peter's grave. This spot had clearly been sacred for hundreds of years before Constantine. They had found why the church was built here. But when they dug up the grave under the shrine, they found nothing. No bones, no holy items. It seemed like the search had failed. Years later, a brilliant archaeologist named Margherita Guarducci looked at the evidence again. She ignored the empty grave and focused on a nearby wall covered in old writing. As she figured out the scribbled prayers from early visitors, she found a key phrase, Petros ini, Greek for Peter is here. Following that clue, she looked inside a small hollow space in that very wall. And there she found them, the bones of a strongly built man, 60 to 70 years old, from the 1st century. The Vatican was careful, but in 1968, Pope Paul VI announced that the remains of St. Peter had been identified in a way they felt was convincing. The bones were probably moved from the simple grave into the protected space in the wall, either when Christians were being attacked or when Constantine was building the church to keep them safe. Conclusion. And this is where our two stories of survival come together. The Passetto di Borgo, stretching 800 meters across the sky, was a physical escape route. It was a plan made of brick and stone, created out of desperation to save one man's life from the violence of his time. It was all about escaping a physical death. But the necropolis, buried deep underground, tells a completely different story. That was a plan not just to save a man, but to secure a worldwide faith. Carefully saving Peter's tomb, building the shrine over it, and Constantine's giant church were all part of a plan for something to last forever. It wasn't about escaping the danger in the here and now, but about cementing a spiritual legacy for all time. One escape route goes across the city, the other goes down through history. One protected the body of a pope, the other protected the very foundation of the papacy. Together, they tell the incredible story of the Vatican's long focus on cheating death, and how survival has always meant looking both to the sky and deep into the earth.